Have you ever felt like you had to choose between strength and wisdom? Between being soft-hearted and standing your ground? What if you didn't have to choose at all? Because there was once a goddess who was all of that. A warrior who didn't fight out of rage. A strategist who loved justice more than vengeance. A woman who never bowed to pressure, yet inspired generations to rise. She was born not from a womb, but from a thunderous crack in the skull of Zeus himself. Fully grown, armored, and ready to change the world. She is Athena, the goddess of war, wisdom, and craft. But today, we're not just telling you who she was. We're diving into why she mattered, and why she still does. In the next 30 minutes, we'll explore the explosive story of her divine birth, her legendary role in wars, myths, and the fate of cities, her surprising passion for arts, crafts, and innovation, and the timeless wisdom she offers for our world today. Whether you're a myth lover, a history buff, or someone just searching for strength in uncertain times, this journey will open your eyes to the brilliance of a goddess who is more than a myth. So, grab your shield, or maybe just your coffee, and let's walk through the marble halls of Olympus to meet the goddess who taught the world that wisdom is a weapon. Long before Athena stood tall on the marble steps of the Parthenon, before she was etched in the pages of myth and memory, she made the most unforgettable entrance in the history of Olympus. But this was no ordinary birth. There was no cradle, no lullaby, just a splitting headache. Zeus, king of the gods, had swallowed his first wife, Metis, the goddess of wisdom and cunning thought, out of fear. A prophecy had warned him that any child born of Metis would one day surpass him. So, in typical Zeus fashion, he chose control. He swallowed her whole. But wisdom doesn't disappear just because it's silenced. Months later, Zeus cried out in unbearable pain. His skull throbbed with pressure, like a storm was brewing behind his eyes. Finally, unable to endure it, he summoned Hephaestus to split his head open, and from that divine wound, Athena emerged, fully grown, clad in armor, spear in hand, eyes burning with purpose. The skies rumbled, the seas stirred. Even the gods were speechless. Not born, but unleashed. It's a powerful image, isn't it? Athena didn't cry when she was born. She roared. Her birth wasn't soft or delicate. It was loud, sudden, undeniable. And maybe that's something we can all relate to. Some of us aren't gently welcomed into the world we dream of. We have to break through it. We arrive not with permission, but with purpose. Athena's birth reminds us that wisdom doesn't always arrive quietly. Sometimes it cracks us open, through pain, through pressure, through moments when we feel like our head might just split in two. But from that place can come something powerful, something unstoppable, something divine. But Athena's story was only just beginning. She wasn't just a goddess of wisdom. She was a warrior. And unlike other gods who fought out of anger, pride, or revenge, Athena chose her battles with something far more dangerous: clarity. Let's step into her mind and discover how she turned intellect into her sharpest weapon. In a world of gods who swung thunderbolts and summoned storms out of pride, Athena stood apart. She was a warrior, yes, but she wasn't a god of rage like Ares. She was a goddess of strategy. When Ares charged into battle with fire in his eyes and blood on his sword, Athena watched. She studied. She waited. Because for Athena, war was never about destruction. It was about resolution. It wasn't about proving power, but restoring balance. She didn't fight out of fury. She fought when wisdom demanded it. That's why heroes like Odysseus sought her guidance during the Trojan War. While others built massive armies, Odysseus built a horse. A hollow wooden horse, filled with soldiers, offered as a gift to the Trojans. It was Athena's idea, a battle won without a single sword drawn. That's her kind of victory. You see, not all wars are fought on battlefields. Some are in boardrooms, some in courtrooms, some in the silence between words, where strategy is the only weapon that matters. Athena's wisdom reminds us, sometimes the smartest move is the quietest one. Sometimes restraint is more powerful than In a world that often rewards who shouts the loudest, she teaches us to listen first, to think before acting, to win not by force, but by foresight. That kind of strength doesn't age. It transcends myths, and it shows up every time you choose patience over panic, clarity over chaos. But there's more to Athena than just wisdom in war. She wasn't only a protector in battle. She was also a protector of something far more fragile, something that can build cities or crumble empires. Ideas. Let's follow her footsteps into Athens and witness how one olive tree changed the fate of a nation. Long ago, before Athens had its name, it had a choice. Two powerful gods stood before its people, each offering a gift. Poseidon, the god of the sea, struck the earth with his trident, and from the ground, a spring burst forth. Water for trade, water for strength. But when the people drank, it was salty, unfit, unkind. Then came Athena. She knelt, pressed her fingers into the soil, and a small tree emerged. An olive tree, modest, quiet, but it offered oil for light, wood for warmth, and fruit for nourishment. It wasn't flashy. It didn't roar like Poseidon's spring, but it endured. And that is how Athena became the patron of the city we now call Athens. Think about that for a moment. In a world of gods who offered power, Athena offered sustainability. Where others flexed, she planted. Where others shouted, she listened. The olive tree became more than a crop. It became a culture. It lit their homes, flavored their food, and built their ships. Even today, olive oil is at the heart of Mediterranean life. Athena didn't just win a contest. She laid the foundation for a civilization. We often think greatness must be loud. That to be remembered, we must make waves. But sometimes legacy grows slowly, like a tree, rooted in purpose, branching into lives for generations. And maybe that's what real leadership looks like, not in the noise of domination, but in the quiet power of giving something that lasts. Of course, Athens didn't just build around that tree. They built temples, laws, and philosophy. They built identity. And at the heart of it all was Athena, not just a warrior or a strategist, but a symbol of vision. But symbols don't stand alone. They carry weight, and Athena's weight was carried in the shield she bore and the wisdom it protected. Let's take a closer look at the emblems she carried, and the deeper meaning behind the owl, the Aegis, and the warrior's gaze. Every great leader carries more than just their title. They carry symbols, icons that reflect their values, their strengths, their soul. For Athena, two such symbols followed her like shadows through history: the Aegis and the owl. The Aegis wasn't just a shield, it was a force of fear. Legend says it bore the head of Medusa, a creature so terrifying that one look could turn you to stone. Athena didn't use it to strike. She used it to warn, to protect, to remind those who opposed her that wisdom, when crossed, can become dangerous. And maybe it's a lesson we forget too easily. True power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it simply shows up, calm, still, but undeniable. The Aegis is not about aggression. It's about presence. It says, I see you. I know what you're capable of. And I'm not afraid. Then there's the owl. Quiet, watchful, wise. The owl doesn't chirp. It doesn't chatter. It observes, and when the time is right, it acts. That's why the owl was Athena's companion. Not because it's cute, but because it sees through the dark. In a world that often rewards noise, the owl reminds us of the strength of stillness, the courage of contemplation, and the value of thinking before speaking. Athena's symbols are more than myth. They are metaphors for modern life. The shield, stand your ground without striking first. The owl, see clearly in times of confusion. Together, they remind us that intellect and intuition are not opposites. They are partners. And in times of uncertainty, we don't always need to fight. Sometimes, we just need to see more clearly and trust what we see. But Athena wasn't just a protector of ideas and vision. She was also a guardian of something more personal, something deeply human: boundaries. In a world where gods and mortals often blurred the line between desire and dominance, Athena stood firm, unyielding. Let's explore the story behind her virginity, her defiance, and the surprising strength found in saying no. In myths, virginity is often misunderstood. It's rarely about physical purity. And for Athena, it had nothing to do with modesty and everything to do with autonomy. She was called a virgin goddess, yes, but not because she feared desire or rejected love. She simply refused to be claimed. To Athena, virginity was a boundary, a bold declaration. I choose where I stand. I choose who gets close, and I own no one access to my body or my mind. She wasn't anti-love. She was pro-sovereignty, and in a world full of gods who took what they wanted, Athena became a divine no. There's a story, one that's often skipped or softened in retellings. Athena once visited Hephaestus, the god of the forge, to request new armor. But he misunderstood her strength for invitation. He tried to force himself on her, but Athena fought back, not with violence, but with divine force. He failed. His seed spilled on the earth, and from that, a child, Arachne, was born, whom Athena chose to raise. Even in chaos, Athena remained in control. She didn't bury the shame. She turned it into protection. She transformed trauma into choice. We live in a world that still sometimes punishes people, especially women, for setting boundaries. But Athena, she carved hers in stone. She reminds us, saying no isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Her story is for anyone who's ever been made to feel small for walking away. Anyone who's ever been told they owe something just because they're strong or kind or available. You don't, and Athena would be the first to tell you that. But her story doesn't end in resistance. Athena didn't just protect herself. She protected civilization. She stood with heroes, shaped destinies, and fought battles. Not always with a sword, but always with strategy. Let's step into those legendary stories of Troy, of Medusa, of Heracles, and discover how Athena became the mind behind the might. Athena didn't sit on a throne, detached from the world of mortals. She walked beside them. She whispered ideas into their minds, planted courage in their hearts. And when they were ready, she stood at their side. Nowhere is this more vivid than in the great war stories of ancient Greece. During the Trojan War, Athena was a quiet storm behind the scenes. While gods like Ares and Aphrodite clashed out of ego and passion, Athena chose Odysseus. Not because he was the strongest, but because he was the most clever. Together, they gave birth to one of the most famous war tactics in history, the Trojan horse. A gift? No, a riddle, a trap, a strategy wrapped in simplicity. Athena didn't just help Odysseus win. She helped him outthink his enemies. Sometimes, life isn't about kicking down doors. It's about building the right kind of entrance and knowing when to walk through it. Then there's Perseus, a young man sent to kill the Gorgon Medusa, a monster whose gaze turned men to stone. He couldn't do it alone, but with Athena's guidance, he used a mirror-like shield to face her without facing her. Once again, Athena didn't hand him brute force. She handed him clarity. It wasn't strength that saved Perseus. It was perception. It was the ability to see danger without looking directly at it. A lesson for all of us who face things too overwhelming to confront head-on. Athena wasn't the hero. She was the guide. She helped Heracles on his labors. She aided Theseus in navigating the labyrinth. She gave Jason the courage to sail the Argo. Always present, always purposeful. Not everyone is meant to swing the sword. Some of us were born to hand it to the right person at the right moment. And there's no shame in that. In fact, it might be the highest form of leadership there is. Because maybe you're not meant to slay the monster. Maybe you're meant to remind someone that they can. And that makes you no less heroic. But Athena's greatness didn't end in war. When the swords were sheathed, when the fires died down, she turned to something quieter. Creation, art, invention, craft. And there, too, she worked her magic. Let's step away from the battlefield and into the workshop of the goddess. When we think of gods of creation, we often picture fire, thunder, or raw elemental force. But Athena? She created with precision, with intellect, with intention. She wasn't just a warrior or a strategist. She was a maker. One of her most understated inventions, the horse bit, a small tool, almost invisible, yet it allowed humans to tame one of the wildest, most powerful animals in history. Not by overpowering it, but by understanding it. That's the genius of her. She doesn't try to conquer nature. She collaborates with it. She didn't break the horse. She bridged the gap between instinct and intention. And her influence didn't stop at animals. Athena was also the goddess of crafts and artistry. Spinning, weaving, pottery, architecture, the kind of work that requires focus, patience, and heart. She believed that creation was sacred. That art wasn't just beauty, it was order, discipline, and expression. Have you ever tried to create something from scratch? A painting? A story? Even a meal for someone you love? Then you've touched Athena's realm. Because every act of creation is also an act of courage. And when you hit that wall, when your mind goes blank, when your fingers falter, Athena would remind you, innovation isn't always a spark. Sometimes it's a quiet persistence. We often think of brilliance as spontaneous, but true genius, it's repetitive, it's disciplined, it's forged over time, like armor from a fire. So whether you're writing a wild idea or crafting something from the silence, remember Athena. She's there in every step forward, every sketch, every blueprint, every quiet, I'll try again. But for all her brilliance, all her patience, Athena also carried something heavy. Judgment, not just of others, but of those who dared to challenge her wisdom. And in one famous tale, that challenge came from a mortal woman with hands as gifted as the gods. Let's unravel the story of Arachne and explore what happens when creativity meets pride. In a quiet village, far from the marble halls of Olympus, there lived a girl named Arachne. She wasn't a goddess. She wasn't royal. She was just talented. Exceptionally so. Her tapestries were breathtaking, so intricate, so beautiful, that people whispered she must have been taught by Athena herself. But Arachne shook her head. No, she said, I'm better than Athena. And that's where the trouble began. Not because Athena was cruel, but because Arachne had forgotten something sacred. That talent is a gift, and humility is what protects it. Athena came to her, not as a goddess, but disguised as an old woman. She gave Arachne a chance to take it back, to show grace, gratitude, but Arachne refused. So Athena revealed herself, and the two began a weaving contest, mortal versus divine. Arachne's work was flawless, but it wasn't kind. She mocked the gods, portraying their flaws, their scandals. Technically brilliant, spiritually reckless. And Athena, though impressed, was heartbroken, not by the skill, but by the disrespect. So she destroyed the tapestry, and in a moment of mercy and justice, turned Arachne into a spider, forever weaving, forever reminded. It's a tale that's lasted centuries, not because of punishment, but because of perspective. Arachne wasn't wrong to be proud of her gift, but she forgot that gifts are most powerful when they're paired with humility. Maybe you felt it too, that spark of brilliance that says, I know what I'm doing. I don't need anyone. And maybe you don't. But wisdom, Athena's kind of wisdom, asks us to remember, even the best still have something to learn. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. And knowing that difference, that's the thread that holds everything together. Athena didn't just shape lives. She shaped systems, from the loom to the courtroom, from the battlefield to the city square. Her wisdom reached far beyond myths. Let's now look at how she redefined justice itself, and why her legacy continues in every courtroom, every decision, and every quiet choice to do what's right. Athena wasn't just the goddess of war and wisdom. She was also the goddess of justice. Not the kind you shout for in anger, but the kind you build slowly, thoughtfully like stone on stone. And in one of the most powerful stories about her, Athena steps not onto the battlefield, but into the courtroom. The story goes like this. A young man named Orestes kills his mother, not out of cruelty, but revenge, because she had murdered his father. It's messy, tragic, complicated. The ancient gods of vengeance, The Arachnes demand blood for blood. But Apollo, the god who instructed Orestes, demands forgiveness. So who is right? That's when Athena steps in. She doesn't wave a divine hand to fix it all. Instead, she builds something new, a trial, with jurors, with arguments, with listening. It was the first of its kind, and it changed everything. What Athena introduced wasn't just a verdict. It was a system, a way to resolve conflict without vengeance, a way to seek truth through reason, and a way to separate justice from wrath. We don't live in Olympus, but we live in a world still shaped by her choice. Every courtroom, every jury, every moment when we say, let's hear both sides first, that's Athena's voice echoing through time. Justice isn't always about laws. Sometimes it's about how we choose to treat each other, how we pause before judging, how we create space for truth, not just opinion. Athena's kind of justice is not blind. It sees, it listens, it weighs, and then it decides, with compassion, with clarity, with courage. From war to wisdom, from crafts to courts, Athena shaped not only gods and heroes, but entire civilizations. And even now, her story is far from over, because her legacy isn't just in myths. It's in you, in me. In every moment, we choose purpose over pride, insight over instinct, and justice over noise. So before we end our journey, let's look one last time at why Athena's story still matters today, and what she continues to whisper to the modern world. Athena may have been born from the mind of Zeus, but today she lives in the minds and hearts of millions. You might not see her on mountaintops anymore, but you'll find her in the courtroom, in the classroom, at the canvas, in every moment where strength meets thoughtfulness, and courage wears the armor of kindness. She's there when you choose to pause instead of react, when you speak up not to win, but to understand, when you build not just with your hands, but with your head and your heart. Athena's legacy isn't carved only in marble. It's woven into the way we think, the way we lead, and the way we love, with boundaries, with balance, and with brilliance. She reminds us that you don't need to be the loudest to be heard. You don't need to be the strongest to make a stand. And you don't need to be perfect to be powerful. In a noisy world, Athena is the quiet voice that says, think deeper, act wiser, estantalleur. And sometimes, that's all we need to hear. If you found strength in silence, clarity in chaos, or courage in kindness, then maybe, just maybe, Athena walks with you too. Thank you for walking this path with us. From the birth of a goddess to the legacy she leaves behind. And if stories like this speak to you, if you believe in the power of myth to reflect who we are and who we can become, then join us. Like this video to keep the flame of ancient wisdom alive. Comment below, what does Athena mean to you? And subscribe to A God Circle to continue the journey through the myths, minds, and might of gods across the world. Because every god has a story, and every story begins with someone willing to listen. We'll see you in the next circle.